Given how strong healing is in the meta right now, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen Alarielle a lot up until now, though recently I have seen people taking her a bit more, including even the legendary rider Rohan himself, who is a known Tyrion enjoyer, but today he's got Alarielle backing up a Star Dragon against the might of Khorne. We got 3 Illyrian Reaver archers and some Dragon Princes here in the main line. Looks like Keepers of the Flame, Regiment of Renown, Phoenix Guard, some Spearmen. And we've also got a single Sister of Avalorn and some more Dragon Princes. So quite a few elites here between the elite missiles, infantry, cavalry, dragon. Lots going on there with not a lot of models. But for the Khorne build, it's looking pretty wide. We've got some Forsaken and Marauders of Khorne, along with some Warriors of Khorne with Axe and Shield as well. A couple of Minotaurs for anti-large, Valkia also for the same, and Warhounds and Fleshhounds on the flanks for some mobility. So Rider Rohan's immediately just going to load up on this left side and more or less kind of concede the right flank. I mean, it's going to take some time for these Fleshhounds and other units to try and close the distance, but it's going to put a pretty decent amount of value here to kind of respond. He kind of threatens the Warhounds initially and then pulls back to a little bit more of a defensive position, kind of just probing. But since the Minotaurs are a little bit out of position, it allows the Star Dragon and the Dragon Princes, along with Alarielle, to just crush some of these Marauders in the front line very decisively, and that's going to now draw these Minotaurs into a big engagement here, where Alarielle can drop some healing. Dragon Princes will definitely take some serious damage in the process, but let's see, a little Spear Slop near right on the Sisters of Avalorn. If the Khorne player had waited half a second, they actually could have hit both of these elite infantry, but still pretty good hit there. Valky's going to charge on in some of the Marauders who survived that, following up into the Keepers. Dragon Princes are getting mostly massacred right now, but it helps the Star Dragon and Alarielle kind of hold out. Sisters of Avalorn putting in a few shots here as well, trying to take out some of these Minotaurs. So, looking pretty decent so far, but the High Elves' ground army is getting eaten up pretty quickly. The Sisters of Avalorn now getting engaged by Chaos Warriors. You've got these Hounds, and Forsaken now turning the flank to drop a nice rear charge, but one unit of Minotaurs has been completely wiped out almost. Nice rear charge from those Illyrian Reavers to finish off their leadership. More Reavers kind of hanging around in this area, looking for some different opportunities to try and help out with their bows or even their swords in melee. Decent melee stats after all. 24 charge bonus and, 32-34 on attack and defense. Definitely not too bad. I mean, they're certainly going to get killed by Minotaurs, there's no question, but supporting the Dragon and Alarielle, they can eat a little bit of healing here, get a nice little charge, and then run back away. It takes some of the shots away from Alarielle and the Dragon, and allows them to survive a lot easier. Yeah, Minotaurs basically didn't do any damage to those 2 high-value single entities, which is a big problem. They did a lot of damage to those Dragon Princes, but great use of the Reaver Archers here to chase those Minotaurs off, make sure they don't come back. These 2 Spearmen here getting absolutely sacrificed to the hordes of Khorne, but it is what it is. Keepers of the Flame should be able to hold out and provide at least one small, stable pocket for Alarielle and the Star Dragon to potentially charge into. But this one unit of Minotaurs is hanging on for a long time. Reavers are going to pull back and use their bows to shoot a little bit, charge around to some different areas, try and bail out these Dragon Princes who have been fighting against enemy mobility on this flank. They've got some decent kills, some decent value, just about to pay for themselves, but are starting to run out of steam a little bit. In general, the High Elves, other than the Keepers of the Flame, which are about to eat another Spear Slop near here, it's nice damage on them. Nothing too crazy, though. I mean, they definitely can tank that, no problem, with Alarielle's healing, but most of the other High Elf support units are starting to evaporate. This Minotaur comes back from route and chases that Illyrian Reaver around for a minute, but I'd imagine they'll perish to the bows of those Reavers, or the Reavers might even just rear charge them before they get a chance to come support this engagement. A few Dragon Princes that remain are also getting a nice rear charge in here, felling a few more of the Minotaurs. Forsaken of Khorne trying to collapse to help support this engagement as well, but the 2 single entities for High Elves are quite slippery, with this little bit of Dragon Princes to help kind of mass block for them and create lanes. And Valkia here looking a little bit exposed, doesn't really have many support units nearby, and especially with the Minotaurs being completely neutralized, the Star Dragon and Alarielle can now jointly try and snipe Valkia. And although Valkia is a very good combatant, great anti-large, there's no way she's a match for both a Star Dragon, which is maybe the best flying monster in the game. I think, yeah, probably the best flying monster in the game. And Alarielle, who's no pushover. I mean, 420 weapon strength, decent stats as well, 45-40, 62 charge, which doesn't apply terribly here. I don't think she actually got her charge bonus, but still. Keepers of the Flame managed to kind of get in the way of this giant horde of Khorne units as they try and collapse here. Alarielle is taking some serious damage, though. She's taking a few big hits from Valkia, getting hit in the back by the Minotaurs that remain. Keepers of the Flame managed to get to the place where they need to be, kind of path through, get into the star. They get that sweet healing from Alarielle, so beautiful hit from that Star of Avalorn, getting all these high-value targets right here. Keepers of the Flame just benefiting greatly from that. Yeah, they are going to be able to do quite well in holding out here. Let's see how the rest of the High Elves are doing. We've got some mobility still active, trying to chase routing units, do their best to make sure not too many units come back to the fight here. Valkia looks like she's on her last legs, though, as the Star Dragon gets a few more critical hits. And as she flees away, she is going to get chomped. And, yeah, not likely to escape. The Star Dragon gets stuck in its charge animation there and just absolutely mauls her. Valkia falls there, and that is going to put a huge dent in the balance of power and in Khorne's leadership. All these Khorne infantry are all of a sudden going to be very vulnerable to terror routes. Nice Star Dragon breath attack. Does some decent damage in that blob. Nothing too crazy, but still. Smartly, once again, very veteran play here from Rider Rohan. He's going to support his cavalry at least as much as possible and kind of use all these units in the same place, so that the cavalry can support the monsters and vice versa. So should be enough to finish off the Warriors' leadership here, or Khorne's leadership rather. Mostly Warriors build. Not really any demonic units, to be honest here. But of course the terror of the Star Dragon is complete, and it's got an insane amount of value, ranked up 4 times. Star Dragons are just amazing. If you are a dragon fan, definitely the High Elves are your jam, right? I mean, obviously other factions have dragons, even dragons that are pretty decent, but nothing compares to the Star Dragon historically, and even still to this day. It's an absolute force of nature. And Alarielle also did a great job of healing, heal capping herself just about, getting a huge amount of healing on the Keepers of the Flame there, keeping the Star Dragon basically completely healthy. It's basically 100% HP right now, so pretty impressive stuff from the High Elves. People, some people, I think, have a bad opinion of the High Elves and think they're weak. I think that hasn't been true for a while. In pretty much ever in Immortal Empires, I think the High Elves have been solid, if not pretty good. I would definitely rate them above the middle of the pack, at least. I mean, they have a really nicely balanced roster with a lot of really good elements, a lot of really good cost-effective mid-tier units. Some of their elites can do quite well, like the Star Dragon I mentioned. The Keepers of the Flame, although they don't quite pay for themselves, get some critical support here on Alarielle and the Star. Of course, Dragon Princess also, one of them performs a great job in kind of screening that enemy mobility on the flank here, and just in general, their high leadership allows them to stick around and still support chase routing units in the late game. Sisters of Avalorn had a little bit of a tough go, but it's a nice unit to have just in case Khorne comes at you with a big single entity. They didn't here, even though it probably would have been good to have, you know, like a Bloodthirster or something really big and nasty to try and take on the Star Dragon. Although without healing, it can be a little bit tricky, honestly. Yeah, High Elves are quite potent in melee because of that, honestly. Although Minotaurs, one of them does end up paying for themselves. They didn't necessarily accomplish their tactical objective of taking out the enemy's large. I mean, Rite of Rohan came with a lot of large value here. It was more than what this Khorne player here, what, Tids Demonin, there we go. Our TK member, it probably didn't have enough anti-large prepared, honestly. I mean, this is quite a bit of spend, but the Minotaurs, I mean, they're really better against cavalry, and they did a good enough job here, but the Star Dragon is just a whole nother level. Again, even the Bloodthirsters, I mean, without healing, they can kind of struggle to be cost-effective. Forsaken do well. I've seen some people talking bad about Forsaken recently. I'm actually a fan right now in a lot of matchups. I think as, maybe not as a full-on mainline like we saw yesterday, but certainly as a flanker unit, they're still quite decent. And the Khorne ones, especially now that they are a little bit better, are worth taking, I think, in a few matchups. Some of the warriors do quite well also, but it's definitely an interesting one. This is a matchup where you get a little bit of rock, paper, scissors, I feel like, in land battles. I mean, you could probably design a build to beat what Rider Rohan built, but you might leave yourself vulnerable in other areas, and that's just kind of the way these balanced factions like the High Elves, who can do a lot of different things, that's the way you have to approach them, is kind of consider like, okay, does my build cover enough bases? And honestly, this build is, again, pretty decent. I don't have a lot of criticisms. I might swap some things out, like maybe to try and take a halberd or two, honestly, though it is a little bit tricky. With the Marauder screen for a front line, I wouldn't be too worried about missiles, so maybe I'd find a way to switch these shield warriors out for halberds. Really, that's it. I don't know if I would make a lot of other changes. You guys let me know down in the comments below, though, about this matchup and anything else on your mind, honestly. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.